Can you believe that at 70 years old, a woman could reverse muscle atrophy and regain her strength in just a few months? Today's story will completely change your perspective on aging and health. And if you or a loved one is facing a similar challenge, watch until the very end, because what I'm about to share could change your life. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss inspiring stories like this. Last March, in her cozy little kitchen, Grace Winters, 70 years old, was trying to do something seemingly simple: reach for a water pitcher on the high shelf. She used to be a renowned physical education teacher, a woman her students always admired for her vitality and energy. But that day, as she reached up, her legs trembled, and then, everything happened in an instant. She lost her balance. Her body tilted forward. Fortunately, she managed to grab the edge of the counter, but the impact sent the glass pitcher crashing to the floor, shattering into pieces. That sound didn't just wake Sarah, her daughter, upstairs. It awakened a painful truth that Grace had been trying to deny for months. She was getting weaker. Day by day, Sarah rushed down the stairs, eyes red with worry. "Mom, are you okay?" But what Sarah saw wasn't just her mother standing among broken glass. It was a frail woman with trembling hands and legs that could no longer support her body. Over the next 3 months, things got worse. Grace could barely stand up from a chair without holding onto the armrests. Carrying a grocery bag became an impossible challenge. Even opening a jar of jam required help from someone else. Her muscles, the muscles that once helped her run marathons, that helped her teach hundreds of students, were now wasting away, disappearing with time. The doctor's diagnosis: age-related muscle atrophy, also known as sarcopenia. "This is normal in older people," the doctor said, his tone professional but lacking hope. "We lose about 38% of muscle mass per decade after age 30, and this rate accelerates after 60. But for Grace, this wasn't just a statistic. It was the end of the independent life she cherished. Then came that fateful day in June. Sarah sat down beside her, held her hand, and said words no one wants to hear. "Mom, I've found a good nursing home. It has beautiful gardens, good food, and 24/7 care staff. I think it's time you got better care." Nursing home. Those two words felt like a slap to Grace's consciousness. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a declaration that she was no longer capable of taking care of herself. It was an admission that she was old, weak, finished. "No," Grace said, her voice quiet but firm. "Give me 3 months. Just 3 months." Sarah was skeptical. "What are you going to do in 3 months?" "You'll see," Grace replied, her eyes lighting up with a spark, something Sarah hadn't seen in a long time. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind filled with thousands of questions. Could she really make a change? Or was this just a desperate attempt by a woman who didn't want to accept reality? Next morning, she began her search, and while browsing the web for rehabilitation exercises, she stumbled upon a video by Dr. Michael Tran, an expert in elderly health. He talked about a method combining special nutrition and a 20-minute daily movement ritual. "Muscles don't know age, Dr. Tran said in the video. Even at 80-90, your body still has the ability to rebuild strength. What you need isn't a miracle, but the right method and perseverance." Grace watched that video 10 times. Each time, the hope in her heart rose a little higher. Dr. Tran explained that older people need more protein than younger people, about 1.2–1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, to maintain and build muscle. And more importantly, they need to combine this with resistance training, even if it's just gentle movements. She began changing her diet. Instead of simple breakfasts with toast and jam, she started eating eggs, Greek yogurt, and nuts. Lunch and dinner always included chicken, fish, or tofu. She drank protein shakes after each main meal. But the hardest part was the movement ritual Dr. Tran suggested. It wasn't intense gym workouts, but a series of movements designed specifically for older adults: standing up and sitting down from a chair, lifting light weights, walking regularly, and stretching exercises. On the first day, she could only sit down and stand up 5 times before feeling exhausted. She had to use her arms to push herself up. Her legs trembled, sweat poured down, and in her head, the voice of doubt whispered, "Maybe Sarah is right. Maybe you're too old for this." But she didn't give up. If this story is touching your heart, hit that like button and share so more people can find motivation. And don't forget to watch until the end to see what happens next. By the second week, Grace could stand up and sit down 10 times.
This is so
The
frustrating.
third week, 15 times. Each day, she recorded her progress in a small notebook, a habit she learned from her years as a teacher. What gets measured gets improved, she used to tell her students. And now, she was applying that principle to her own life. Sarah observed her mother with a mix of skepticism and concern. Some mornings, her daughter saw her trying to lift those little pink dumbbells, the ones Sarah used in high school. Some afternoons, Grace walked around the neighborhood, each step slow but persistent. And some evenings, she sat preparing protein portions for the next day, carefully measuring every gram. The second month was the hardest period. That's when the initial excitement had faded, when the body hadn't shown significant changes yet, when each morning was a battle with fatigue and doubt. There were days she just wanted to stay in bed and give up. There were nights she cried in the bathroom, wondering if her efforts meant anything. But then, one morning at the end of month 2, something miraculous happened. Grace was preparing breakfast when she realized she had opened the jam jar without anyone's help. It was a small act, almost meaningless to anyone else. But for her, it was a monumental victory. She stood in the middle of the kitchen, clutching the jar in her hand, and tears began to flow. "Mom, are you crying?" Sarah rushed over. "No." Grace smiled through her tears. "These are tears of joy, honey. I just opened the jam jar." Sarah didn't understand why that mattered so much, but seeing the smile on her mother's face, the first radiant smile in months, her daughter also felt hope rising. From that day on, everything changed. Grace began to notice the difference. Her legs no longer trembled when standing up. Her sleeves weren't hanging loose anymore. She could carry grocery bags from the car into the house without needing to rest halfway. And most importantly, she felt like she was coming back to life. By mid-March, exactly 3 months since her promise to Sarah, Grace saw a notice on the community bulletin board: 25th Annual Community Garden Competition. Registration deadline 2 weeks away. Competition date end of April. She stopped reading and rereading that notice. Gardening, that used to be her passion, before age stole her strength. She remembered those afternoons kneeling on the ground, the feeling of wet soil under her hands, the scent of roses and ripe tomatoes. She remembered the feeling of creating, of nurturing life. And in that moment, she made a bold decision: she would enter this competition. Not to win, but to prove to herself, to Sarah, to everyone, that 70 wasn't the end. When Grace announced her decision, Sarah was shocked. "Mom, that competition requires working outside all day, digging soil, planting, caring for the garden for a whole month. Are you sure you can't?" Grace interrupted, her voice firm but not lacking affection. 3 months ago, you said I needed to go to a nursing home. And now, I can stand on my own 2 feet. I can live independently. Do you see the difference?" Sarah couldn't deny it. Her mother had changed. Not just physically, though her muscles were clearly firmer, her posture straighter, but mentally too. Her mother's eyes had become vibrant, her voice confident, and there was a vitality Sarah thought was lost forever. "Okay," Sarah finally nodded, "but I'll help you." And so they began. Grace planned her garden like a teacher plans a lesson. She researched plants suitable for the climate, designed a harmonious layout, and chose complementary colors. But most importantly, she continued her daily movement ritual because she knew she would need every ounce of strength for the weeks ahead. Each day, after completing her morning resistance exercises, she went out to the garden. Initially, it was just preparing the soil work that required bending down, digging, and hauling. Each shovelful was a challenge. Each time she bent down, her back protested. But each time she stood up, she was a little stronger. Sarah watched from the window, her heart full of mixed emotions. There was pride seeing her mother so resilient. There was worry, afraid her mother would overexert herself. And there was some shame for being too quick to want to send her mother away, for not believing in the strength of the woman who gave birth to and raised her. 3 weeks before the competition, Grace's garden began to take shape. Climbing roses wound around bamboo trellises. Red ripe tomatoes mingled with yellow chrysanthemums. Basil and mint released gentle fragrances. And in the center, a small stone bench where she rested after each work session, where she sat and gazed at her creation with deep gratitude. But this wasn't just a garden. It was a symbol of resurrection. Each plant that grew was proof of what she had overcome. Each flower that bloomed was an affirmation that life doesn't end at 70, that it could be the beginning of a new chapter. Competition day arrived. The sky was clear blue, sunshine gentle, a perfect day. Grace woke up at 5 a.m., ate her usual protein-rich breakfast, and did warm-up exercises. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman looking back. This was no longer the frail woman from 3 months ago. This was a woman with straight shoulders, firm muscles, and most importantly eyes full of determination. She smiled at herself, a triumphant smile. Arriving at the community park, she saw dozens of other participants, most much younger than her. There were people in their 40s, 50s, even young people in their 30s. They looked at her with curious eyes, some skeptical. Can she do it? She heard someone whisper. She didn't respond. She let the results speak. For the next 3 hours, she worked non-stop, adjusting a few flowers, watering carefully, cleaning wilted leaves. Each movement carried months of training. Each action was a perfect combination of strength and technique. Sarah stood beside her, sometimes helping, but mostly just observing. And while observing, her daughter realized something: her mother wasn't just gardening. She was living. She was proving that life isn't limited by age, but by what we believe about ourselves. When time was up, all contestants had to stop. The judges, 3 experts in gardening and landscape design, began walking through each garden. They observed, took notes, discussed. When they reached Grace's garden, they paused longer than usual. One of the judges, a middle-aged woman with black-rimmed glasses, knelt down for a closer look. "This design so refined," she said. "The combination of flowers and vegetables, colors and fragrances. And more importantly, there's a soul here. You can feel the love and care in every detail. This is the most important conclusion. Make sure you've turned on notifications so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this." An hour later, the results were announced. The judges stood on the small stage, microphone in hand. "This year's competition had many excellent works," the chairman said. "But one garden touched our hearts, not just for its beauty, but for the story behind it." Grace squeezed Sarah's hand, her heart pounding. "First place goes to Grace Winters, with her work The Garden of Resurrection." A moment of silence, then thunderous applause. Everyone stood up, not just to congratulate a winner, but to honor a warrior. Grace walked onto the stage, each step firm steps she couldn't imagine taking 3 months ago. On stage, she held the trophy and turned to the crowd. "I didn't win this for myself," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I won it for everyone who ever thought they were too old, too weak, too late. I'm 70 years old. 3 months ago, my daughter wanted to put me in a nursing home because I couldn't take care of myself. Today, I stand here, not just with this trophy, but with a healthy body and a resurrected soul." Tears flowed down her face, but they were tears of joy. Age is just a number. What matters is what you believe about yourself and what you're willing to do to prove it. Sarah stood below the stage, sobbing, not from shame, but from pride. Pride in the mother who never gave up, pride in the journey they had traveled together. In the days following the competition, Grace's story spread throughout the community. Local residents began visiting her garden. They asked about her diet, her exercises, her secrets, and she shared everything, keeping no secrets. "There's no magic," she always said. "Just persistence, the right method, and belief in your body's capabilities. Whether you're 60, 70, or 80, your muscles can still grow if you provide the right nutrition and appropriate stimulation." She became a phenomenon in the elderly community. The community center invited her to speak. The local newspaper wrote articles about her. And most importantly, she received dozens of letters from other elderly people who found hope in her story. One letter particularly touched her heart. It was from a 68-year-old woman named Margaret, who wrote, "I had mentally prepared myself to accept that decline was inevitable. But your story lit a flame of hope in me. Today is the first day I'm beginning my own journey. Thank you for showing me it's not too late." Grace read those words and realized that her greatest victory wasn't the trophy, but the ability to inspire others. She had turned her pain into a source of strength for the community. That evening, after everyone had left, Grace and Sarah sat in the garden under the gentle light of lanterns. The scent of jasmine floated in the cool air. It was a peaceful moment, a moment they both had needed for a long time. Mom Sarah spoke up, her voice choked. "I'm sorry." Grace turned to look at her daughter, surprised. "Sorry for what, honey?" "For not believing in you. For thinking the nursing home was the only solution. I was just afraid of losing you. I was afraid that one day you'd fall, and I wouldn't be there to catch you." Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. Grace placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder, the gesture gentle but full of love. "You know, there are things I learned over these past 3 months," she said. "The first is fear can make us make wrong decisions, even when they come from love. You were worried about me, and that's natural. But sometimes, worry can take away someone else's opportunity to prove themselves. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. The second thing, she continued, is that it's never too late to change. Not just physically, but in relationships too. You and I had a difficult 3 months, but we got through it. And now, our relationship is stronger than ever. Mother and daughter hugged in the garden under the starry sky. And in that moment, nothing else mattered, not the trophy, not the recognition, not the numbers on the scale. The only thing that mattered was the love and connection they had rediscovered. In the following weeks, Grace's life changed in ways she hadn't expected. The community center invited her to be an advisor for the Healthy Aging program. She began hosting small workshops in her garden, where she guided other elderly people on nutrition and exercise. The first group had only 5 people. They sat on stone benches in the garden, listening to her share about her journey. She didn't speak in a teaching manner, but told stories like a friend sharing experiences. She talked about the difficult early days, the times she wanted to give up, the joy of seeing progress no matter how small. You know, she said, the hardest thing isn't physical pain. It's the voice in your head, the voice that says you can't, you're too old, you're too weak. But I learned that voice is lying. Our bodies have amazing capabilities, as long as we give them a chance. A 75-year-old man named Henry raised his hand. But how did you keep your motivation? I've tried many times but always give up after a few weeks. Grace smiled, understanding that feeling well. I didn't tell myself I had to do this forever. I just said today, I will do it. Just today. And tomorrow, I said the same thing. One day at a time, one step at a time. And before you know it, 3 months have passed, and you've become a completely different person. 6 months after the competition, Grace's garden had become a famous location in the community. Not just because of its beauty, but because of the meaning it carried. It was a symbol of hope, of perseverance, of the belief that life can change at any age. Her workshop group had grown from 5 people to 20. They came from all over the city, elderly people wanting to regain their health, middle-aged people wanting to prepare for old age, and even young people wanting to learn how to care for their aging parents. She taught them about the importance of protein, how to calculate needs, how to incorporate it into daily meals. She guided them through simple but effective exercises that could be done at home without expensive equipment. And most importantly, she shared her life philosophy: old age isn't a period of decline, but a period of maturity. Henry, the 75-year-old man who had asked about motivation after 3 months, had lost 15 kg and could climb stairs without getting winded. Margaret, the woman who had written to her, could now play with her grandchildren without needing to rest every 5 minutes. These success stories spread. National newspapers wrote about the Grace movement, a grassroots movement encouraging elderly people to take back control of their health. Other community centers began copying her model. And within a year, over 100 gardens of resurrection had been created across the country. But for Grace, the greatest success wasn't those numbers. It was the small moments: seeing an elderly woman stand up from a chair without support for the first time in years, hearing an old man laugh loudly because he had just completed 10 weight lifts, receiving a hug from an adult child who had just seen their parent regain confidence. Those were the moments that made every drop of sweat, every second of pain, every moment of wanting to quit worthwhile. 1 year after the competition, on the exact anniversary, Grace organized a special gathering in her garden. Everyone who had attended the workshops, everyone who had been inspired by her story, was invited. Over 100 people showed up. The small garden didn't have enough space, so some people had to stand outside the fence, but no one complained. They came to celebrate not just Grace's journey, but their own. She stood before the crowd, her heart overflowing with emotion. A year ago, I stood on stage holding a trophy and said that age is just a number, she began. Today, I want to add, life isn't measured by the years we live, but by what we do with those years. I'm 71 years old. My body isn't like it was at 20. But you know what? I don't want to go back to 20. Because at 20 I didn't have the wisdom I have now. I didn't have the appreciation for life I have now. And most importantly, I didn't have the ability to inspire others like I can now. Thunderous applause. People in the crowd, many with gray hair, stooped shoulders, stood a little straighter, smiled a little more proudly. Because they saw themselves in Grace. They saw their own potential. My journey began with fear, she continued. Fear of losing independence. Fear of becoming a burden. Fear that the best part of my life was over. But I learned that fear, when used correctly, can become the most powerful motivation. I'm not saying my journey was easy. There were days I cried. There were nights I
Oh my
wondered if it was worth
goodness.
it. But every time I wanted to give up, I
Thank you so
remembered why
much
I
for this
started,
amazing
not to win a
honor.
competition,
Yes, we are
not to
truly
prove anything
grateful
to
for all
anyone,
of your
but to
support.
reclaim my own life. She paused, looking at the crowd. And now, seeing all of you here people who have started their own journeys, I realize that my greatest success isn't what I achieved for myself. It's that I helped you believe that you can do it too. Tears, laughter, hugs, that's what happened next. Strangers became friends,
So, what's your
connected by a
secret,
common
Grace?
goal to live the best life
You look
possible,
absolutely
regardless of age.
radiant.
Sarah stood beside her
I'm
mother,
telling you,
hand gently
it was
touching her
the
shoulder.
best
"Are you
decision
proud
that
of what
I've
you've done?"
ever
her daughter asked.
made.
Grace turned, smiling.
Really?
I
Well, it
started
was
this to
quite a
avoid a
journey,
nursing home.
but we made
But
it.
now I realize I didn't
And
just
that,
avoid
my
something
friends,
terrible.
is how I
I found
ended
a
up
new
with a pet
purpose.
squirrel.
And that's the greatest gift this age can bring. As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and yellow, Grace sat alone on the stone bench in the middle of the garden. The crowd had gone home.
It is
Sarah
so
had gone
wonderful
inside
to
to
see
prepare
you,
dinner.
Grace.
And in
And
that
you too,
quiet moment,
Sarah.
she reflected on the journey she had traveled. From a woman about to enter a nursing home, she had become a
Oh,
community
that's
leader.
priceless. I
From
haven't
being
laughed that
unable to
hard
open
in
a jam
ages.
jar, she could work all day in the garden. From fearing the
Grace,
future,
this
she had
garden is
become excited about
absolutely
possibilities.
stunning.
And it all
Thank
started
you for
with one
coming,
decision:
Sarah.
give me 3 months. 3 months to prove. 3 months to change. 3 months to find herself again.
Ready to
But the
go?
biggest lesson
Yes.
she learned wasn't about nutrition or exercise, though those things were important. The biggest lesson was about belief. Belief that our bodies want to be healthy.
It's getting
Belief that
late.
it's never too late to
We should
start.
turn
Belief
back.
that we are much stronger than we think. Grace stood up from the bench, the movement easy, no support needed, and walked toward the house. But before going in, she turned back, taking one last look at the garden fading in the twilight. The garden of resurrection, she whispered. Not just a garden of plants, but a garden of the soul, of hope, of beginning again. And that's the story of Grace, a woman who proved that 70 isn't the end, but could be the beginning of the most amazing things. If you or a loved one is facing a similar situation, feeling weaker with passing years, losing confidence, or thinking it's too late to change, remember this story. Remember that your body has extraordinary capabilities as long as you give it a chance. Start small. Just one small change in your diet. Just 5 minutes of exercise each day. And from those small steps, build a new life. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive more inspiring stories like this. Share this video with people you care about, especially those who need a little motivation, a little hope. And if you want to learn more specifically about the method Grace used, about the nutrition plan, about the specific exercises, leave a comment below. We'll create a more detailed video based on your interest. Remember, age is just a number. What matters is what you believe about yourself and what you're willing to do to prove it. Your life, your best life, can start today, no matter how old you are. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video, and remember, it's never too late to be resurrected.